I never really thought much about Kelly's recent obsession with dating apps. She claimed it was for her sister, Lauren, who had just finalized her divorce. "I'm just helping her get back out there," she'd say, flashing me that innocent smile. And like an idiot, I believed her. At first, it made sense. Lauren had been married for almost 10 years. She was out of practice when it came to dating, and Kelly had always been the social one. It wasn't unusual for them to share things, clothes, makeup tips, even old high school gossip. So, when Kelly sat on the couch at night, phone in hand, giggling at messages and swiping through profiles, I didn't question it. Maybe I should have. It started as a minor irritation. Her phone was always buzzing. If we were watching a movie, she'd glance at the screen and smirk before flipping it face down. If we were eating dinner, she'd hold it under the table, pretending to check emails. Still, I shrugged it off. Then I noticed she became protective over it. She used to leave it lying around without a second thought, but now she kept it close. Took it to the bathroom. Slid it under her pillow before bed. If I even glanced at it, she'd get defensive. "You don't trust me," she teased one night, tucking her legs under her as she scrolled. "I told you, it's just for Lauren." She always had an answer. A well-rehearsed, casual response that made me feel like an idiot for even thinking twice. Then, one day, I ran into Lauren at the grocery store. We were both reaching for a carton of eggs when I smiled at her. "Hey, how's it going? Been on any dates yet?" Lauren looked confused. "What do you mean?" I laughed. "Kelly said she's been helping you with dating apps. I figured you'd have some stories by now." She blinked. "Dating apps?" She shook her head, tucking a strand of blonde hair behind her ear. "No, I've been seeing someone for a few months now. We're actually pretty serious." My stomach twisted. That didn't make sense. Kelly was still swiping. Still texting. Still giggling at her phone late at night. If Lauren wasn't using those apps, then who was? A dark feeling crept over me, coiling in my gut like a snake ready to strike. I tried to shake it off, convince myself that Kelly was just being nosy, scrolling through other people's profiles for fun. She had always been the type to live vicariously through others. But this? This was different. That night, I watched her more closely. She curled up on the couch, phone in hand, the screen reflecting off her face. Her eyes darted across the messages, her lips pressing together in that way they did when she was amused but didn't want to show it. Then a notification popped up. She quickly swiped it away before I could read it. My heartbeat drummed in my ears. I needed to know the truth. When she got up to take a shower, I waited until the water started running before I picked up her phone. I shouldn't have hesitated, but I did. This was my wife. The woman I had loved, trusted, and built a life with. But as I stared at that screen, at the glowing notifications that never seemed to stop, I felt something shift inside me. A line had been crossed. With a deep breath, I unlocked her phone. And what I found shattered everything. My hands were shaking as I scrolled. There was no way to misunderstand what I was looking at. Kelly wasn't helping her sister. She wasn't playing matchmaker. She was the one looking for men, dozens of them. The messages stretched back for months. There were flirtations, intimate conversations, and worst of all, undeniable proof of physical encounters. Photos. Videos. Hotel reservations. Timestamps that made my blood run cold. While I was at work, while I was paying the bills, while I was cooking dinner for us, she was out there. Meeting up with them. Letting them touch her. Doing things with them that I thought were just ours. The betrayal hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. Some of the messages were sickeningly casual. "That was fun. Let's do it again soon. You're amazing, he has no idea what he's missing." can't talk right now, he's home. I clenched my jaw. The worst part wasn't even the cheating itself. It was how easy it was for her. How effortless the lies had come. I scrolled further. Names. Faces. Some of them were just first names, Josh, Eric, Mark. Others had full profiles saved in her phone. Married men. Single men. Some younger, some older. She wasn't just having an affair. She was living a double life. My stomach churned. I kept going, despite the growing nausea, despite the overwhelming rage curling in my gut like a fire I couldn't put out. There were details of places they had been. A restaurant I had taken her to for our anniversary, she had been there with someone else. The hotel down the street. The one she had laughed about, calling it shady. She had booked a room there more than once. My fingers tightened around the phone. The shower was still running. She had no idea. No idea that everything she thought was hidden had been dragged into the light. No idea that the lies she had wrapped herself in like a safety blanket had just unraveled. Then the water stopped. I lifted my head, barely registering my own reflection in the dark screen of her phone. The bathroom door creaked open. Kelly stepped out, wrapped in a towel, her damp blonde hair dripping onto her shoulders. She stretched, sighing in satisfaction, like someone who had no worries in the world. Like someone who hadn't just been caught. Her lips curled into that same lazy smirk she always gave me after a hot shower. "Why do you look like that?" she asked. I didn't say anything. I just held up the phone. The smirk faded. A single drop of water slid down her cheekbone, but she didn't move to wipe it away. For the first time in years, I saw something crack in her expression. Panic. She barely flinched, though. Kelly had always been quick, always thinking, always scheming. And just like that, the mask slipped back into place. "You went through my phone," she said, voice sharp with indignation. "That's a huge invasion of privacy, Greg." That was her response. Not an ounce of guilt. Not a single pathetic attempt at a lie. Just anger, as if I was the villain here. I exhaled slowly, feeling something inside me harden. "Privacy?" I echoed, my voice dangerously calm. "That's what you're going with?" She crossed her arms. "You're the one snooping. Do you even realize how insane that is?" I stepped toward her. She stiffened. "You told me you were helping Lauren," I said. "But Lauren's been seeing someone for months." I took another step. "So tell me, Kelly, who exactly are you helping?" Her mouth opened. No words came out. She was trapped. For the first time in our entire marriage, I saw something real flash across her face. Not guilt. Not regret. Fear. I didn't scream. I didn't throw things. I just stared at her, at the woman I had spent years of my life loving, trusting, building a future with, and I felt nothing. No more pain. No more sadness. Just a cold, quiet understanding. This was who she was. I nodded once, set her phone down on the dresser, and walked out of the bedroom. Kelly didn't chase after me. Maybe she thought I needed space. Maybe she believed she could talk her way out of this in the morning. She had no idea what was coming. For 2 days, I said nothing. I still went to work. I still came home. I still ate dinner at the same table as her. And Kelly? She pretended. She cooked my favorite meals. She laughed at TV shows like everything was normal. Like she could just wait this out, let me cool off and then offer me some weak excuse, some twisted version of the truth. I let her think it was working. I let her believe she still had control. And then, the moment she fell asleep, I started. One by one, I messaged the men she had been with. I kept it simple. "Hey, just a heads up. Kelly tested positive for an incurable STD. You might want to get yourself checked. I didn't name the disease. I let their imaginations do the rest. The first message came in within minutes. WTF? Are you serious? Then another. This better be a joke. Tell me you're lying. Then another. Oh my God. I have a wife, man. I have a family. And another. You're a sick bastard for lying about something like this. And then, silence. A silence that told me exactly what was happening. Panic. They were scrambling, Googling symptoms, checking themselves in the mirror, realizing just how badly they had screwed up. Some of them had wives. Girlfriends. Careers that would crumble if something like this got out. Some of them had been reckless, hadn't used protection. I imagined their faces, the cold sweat on their brows, the tightness in their chests as they wondered, what if? I went to bed that night and slept better than I had in months. By the next afternoon, the real chaos had begun. Kelly's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. She picked it up, frowning as she checked the messages. Then, slowly, her face drained of color. She stood up so fast her chair nearly toppled over. Greg, she whispered. What did you do? I sipped my coffee. What do you mean? She threw her phone onto the table. They're freaking out. Saying I gave them some kind of disease. I raised an eyebrow. Did you? Her eyes widened in horror. Of course not. Well, I said, setting my mug down. I guess they don't know that. She shook her head, hands flying to her hair as she paced the kitchen. No. No, no, no. You don't understand. This is, Greg, they're losing it. One of them just threatened to tell my boss. Another one's wife found out. This isn't funny. I leaned back in my chair, watching her unravel. Not so fun when the lies come back to bite you, huh? Her breath hitched. You're ruining my life. I laughed. Your life. Kelly, you ruined mine. You lied to me. You humiliated me. You slept with God knows how many men and thought you'd just get away with it. She was shaking. You don't understand what you've done. These guys, some of them are married, Greg. One of them already called his lawyer. Good, I said. Maybe you'll get sued for emotional distress. Lord knows you deserve it. Her hand slammed against the counter. You're insane. Am I? I stood up, closing the space between us. She flinched. You spent months sneaking around behind my back, I said, voice low. You lied every single day. And the first time someone lies to you, you can't handle it. She opened her mouth, then closed it. For the first time since this all started, she had nothing to say. That night, the phone calls started. One by one, the men she had been with tried to call her. Some were furious. Some were terrified. One man's wife had found out. She kicked him out of the house and was already talking to a lawyer. Another man, the one who had money, influence, told her he was going to destroy her. That if his reputation took a hit, he'd make sure she paid the price. Kelly was in hell. And I loved every second of it. By the next morning, she was a wreck. Dark circles under her eyes. Hair a mess. Hands trembling as she stared at her phone like it was a bomb waiting to go off. I was eating breakfast when she finally spoke. Greg. I didn't look up. Greg, please. Her voice was small now, barely above a whisper. Make it stop. I finished my coffee, set the mug down, and smiled. No. It happened faster than I expected. By noon, the first marriage had collapsed. One of her lovers, some guy named Ethan, had a wife. A wife who, unfortunately for him, had access to his medical records. She saw his panicked appointment with the doctor. She saw the frantic late-night searches for symptoms. And when she confronted him, it only took one look at his face to know he was guilty. She filed for divorce the next day. Another guy, Mark, was high-profile. A lawyer, I think. A name that mattered in his field. The kind of man who couldn't afford a scandal like this. By the time Kelly woke up that morning, Mark had already sent her a message. "If my name gets dragged into this, I swear to God I'll bury you." She wasn't even out of bed before the threat started rolling in. And then there was Ryan. Ryan was different. Ryan was in love. He had been seeing Kelly for months, thinking she was his future. Thinking she was going to leave me and be with him. Ryan wasn't just angry. He was devastated. And devastation turns to vengeance. "I hope it was worth it," he wrote. "I'm suing you for emotional distress. You lied to me. You ruined my life. Now I'm going to ruin yours." And Kelly? She was blindsided. She didn't eat. Didn't sleep. Didn't shower. She just sat there on the couch, knees pulled to her chest, phone clutched so tightly in her hands I thought she might crack the screen. When it wouldn't stop buzzing, she finally snapped. She spun around, eyes wild, voice shaking with fury. "What the hell did you do?" I barely looked up from my coffee. "I told the truth," I said, taking a slow sip. "Something you should have tried." She unraveled in real time. First, the anger. "You're sick, Greg. You're twisted. You think this is funny." Then, the denial. "This is all a misunderstanding. These guys are freaking out over nothing. It's going to blow over." Then, the bargaining. "We can fix this," she whispered, voice cracking. "I love you, Greg. I do. This doesn't have to end like this." That was when I laughed. A deep, bitter sound that felt foreign in my throat. "You don't love me," I said. "You love not getting caught." She stared at me, mouth opening, then closing. For once, she had nothing to say. Then came the begging. She tried every trick she had ever used. She cried. Fell to her knees. Reached for my hand. "Please, Greg," she whispered. "We've built a life together. Don't throw that away." I looked down at her, this woman I had once adored, and felt nothing. She wasn't my wife anymore. Maybe she never had been. "Pack your things," I told her. "You're leaving tonight." Her breath hitched. "Wait, what?" "You heard me." She shook her head, eyes darting around, looking for an escape. "I have nowhere to go." "Not my problem." Her lower lip trembled. "Greg, I stepped forward, towering over her, voice cold as ice. "Get out." She finally understood. For the first time since this all started, she realized there was no talking her way out of this. No manipulation. No charm. This was over. She wiped her face, turned on shaky legs, and started packing. I watched her leave that night. A single suitcase. No goodbye. She didn't even try to look me in the eyes. She climbed into her car, hands gripping the wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. She sat there for a while. Maybe thinking I'd stop her. Maybe thinking I'd change my mind. I didn't. Then, without a word, she pulled out of the driveway. And just like that, she was gone. I stood there, letting the silence settle. For the first time in years, the house felt peaceful. The weight on my chest, the crushing doubt, the anger, the humiliation, was finally lifting. I exhaled slowly, staring up at the night sky. It was over. Kelly was gone. But the war? The war had just begun. The house was quiet after that. Too quiet. No more buzzing phone. No more fake laughter from the couch. No more whispered lies behind closed doors. Kelly was gone. And I had won. Her world was in flames, and I had set the fire. Every man she had been with was in turmoil. Ethan was getting divorced, his wife demanding everything. Mark was scrambling to do damage control, terrified of what would happen if his name leaked. Ryan was out for blood, telling everyone who would listen that Kelly had destroyed his life. I had taken everything from her. Her reputation. Her security. Her control. She had spent months thinking she was untouchable. Thinking she could lie, cheat, and walk away unscathed. But now, she was the one drowning. And yet, as I sat in the living room that night, staring at the empty space where she used to sit, something gnawed at me. Something hollow. I should have felt satisfied. Hell, I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I just felt tired. I had spent so much time planning my revenge. Crafting every detail. Watching it unfold. But now that it was over, I wasn't sure what was left of me. For years, I had built my life around us, around a marriage that turned out to be a lie. Now, that lie was gone. So what did that make me? I poured myself a drink and sat on the porch. The air was crisp. The street was quiet. For the first time in months, I didn't have to wonder where she was, who she was with, what new lie she was spinning. It was peaceful. And yet, somewhere in the back of my mind, a single question whispered. Was it enough? Sure, Kelly had been destroyed. Sure, the men she cheated with were paying the price. But had I really won? Or had I just burned everything down and walked away from the ashes? I swirled the whiskey in my glass, watching the ice melt. Then I turned the question over to you. Would you have done something different?